Pinkishe Foundation working for menstrual health and hygiene. In just 7 years, Pinkishe has emerged as a powerful force working across 27 states, securing prestigious awards and forming strategic national and international partnerships that have amplified its impact. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for President, Pinkishe Foundation, Mr. Arun Gupta. As we move further, now is the time I would like to introduce Mr. Vikas Bagaria. Is a seasoned entrepreneur with over 27 years of experience in establishing and scaling successful businesses. This led to the creation of P-Safe's Enterprise by Satya Micro Capital Limited, a leading microfinance institute of India. She was felicitated with Women Transforming India Award by MHAi, New Delhi. Please put your hands together for the founder, Unipads India Private Limited, Ms. Geeta, Solanki. A very warm welcome to you, ma'am. As we are about to start the discussion and the panel discussion, current status, MHAi framework and policy guidelines, we have our panel head, Dr. Arundati Muralidharan. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you so much for that very warm welcome. I'm delighted to be joined by Geeta, Arun, and Vikas today. So before we get started with what I think is going to be a really fun panel, I just want to reflect and share some thoughts about where we are in terms of policy development and where I think that we need to be focusing our efforts as civil society actors, as well as small and medium enterprises, researchers and investors and funders who are in this space. One is we're lucky that we are in a country that has an incredibly period product landscape. We not just have single-use pads, but we also have reusable pads of different types. We have menstrual period underwear, we've got cups, we've got menstrual discs. I mean, we're one of the most vibrant markets that we have today. In all of this and our individual passions and our advocacy and our commitment towards promoting our specific products of choice, let's not forget the role and the critical importance of informed choice and enabling girls and women and other people who menstruate to have access to information about all period products and providing them the rightful choice to make that choice for themselves based on their own lives, their own needs and their contexts and realities. This morning, I was very encouraged to hear the dialogue, but I was also disappointed that we're not shifting the onus and responsibility of environmental considerations of period products on manufacturers. We need to do that. The environmental burden of products should not be put on people who menstruate. It should be on those who are making period products. And how can we ensure regulations that allow for the creation of safer products and also for regulations that allow for their disposal and waste management. We are speaking, again, we heard some really important points on waste disposal. And I think that given the immense amount of work that we've done, we have actually fallen behind on solving the disposal conundrum. We need to be looking at this across the value chain. From the time that a user, I discard my pad in a dustbin, to that journey of that discarded product to the end of its life. How are we making disposal and waste management solutions more easily accessible and more convenient for those of us who experience a period? We are still talking about menstrual hygiene. We really should be talking about menstrual health. Hygiene is a part of health, but it's about time that we expand that narrative to looking at menstrual health more holistically. So I'd like to see that shift come in policy and also the kind of work that we're doing and investments that are made. Adolescent girls are undoubtedly key to much of our work, and many of us in this room have focused on them. They are our future. We need to continue to invest in them. But as we do this, we need to take a life course approach. We need to look at how do we reach girls before they hit puberty and with what level of information and with what depth of information. How do we do that sensitively and in a way that's meaningful for them? And how do we reach those who are above the age of 19, who will continue to have a period to 20 to 30 years of their life, but we've forgotten them. We don't include them in many of our programs. So how do we take that life course approach and provide menstrual health support across that time? We also need to be shifting and learning actually from what we have done in communities and in schools to looking at other settings, whether that's work settings, in public settings and others, of how do we transfer some of those critical learnings of menstrual hygiene that we've done to these. Classic example is toilets. Thanks to Swachh Bharat, we have sex-segregated or gender-responsive toilets in many schools. How do we now focus on higher education institutions? How do we bring that learnings into public settings in urban and rural India? We have good examples in urban India, but how do we take that out of also to rural India? How do we ensure that all work sites, formal and informal, have access to safe private toilets, as Sadhviji was saying earlier? So how do we kind of take these learnings and apply to different and across settings where girls, women and other people who menstruate are engaging on a daily basis? We've seen intersectoral action for menstrual health and hygiene, WASH, education, adolescent health, but there's scope also to engage more deeply with gender equality sector and those that are working on girls and women's empowerment. Those sectors are ones that have been looking at gender issues, social norms, cultural shifts, but we're not engaging with them deeply enough to learn how we can actually address menstrual taboos and social norms that are working to the detriment of girls and women and others. Let's engage with that sector, and it's about time that we do so. I've been really encouraged to see the amount of data and research that is coming out of this country, more than any other country in this world. It is fantastic. Plus, we have such a vibrant civil society that is sitting on a wealth of insight in terms of what's working on the ground through your work. Let's figure out ways by which we can share this more widely and that we all have access to the latest research and data so that we're able to use that competitively, whether to raise money for our programs or whether to make important statements representative, whether we are a social enterprise or whether we are a private sector player, all of whom are represented on this panel. We wanted to talk about that. So I'm going to start off with a question that over the past few years, what are some of the critical opportunities that the three of you have seen in your work and that have actually affected your work positively? And Geeta, I want to begin with you. You have very recently undergone a rigorous, laborious process of getting certified by the Bureau of Indian Standards for your product and especially in response to the recent quality control order by the Government of India. Tell us what's been your takeaway from this?
Good morning, everyone. Actually, good afternoon. So, Arundati, for personally, when I say about Unipads, I think BIS is one of the turning point for us because I'll tell you why. Right from the first MHAi summit, I remember in 2019 and 20, the conversations, the ongoing conversations among all the stakeholders present here, like most of us have been attending it every year, has always been focused on continuous partnership between public and private sector, right? And I think this QCO is the very beginning stage of that, which is very important. So when we talk about having, masses having the 70% of the population, I think this intervention was very much needed and it's there. And fortunate enough to get it certified, I think, for the years.
And Geeta, I know that's not an easy process as well. So it is laborious, and as we move further in this conversation, I'd like you to shed some light on how can we ease some of these policy processes because we're not always engaged in them. So we'll come back and circle back on that. Arun, over the 7 years, you've been engaging quite heavily with CSR, and we do know that there is a CSR mandate to allocate a certain amount of funds. Many of us in this room may have also leveraged some of those CSR funds, but have also struggled to do so in a consistent manner. What kind of reflections, what kind of takeaways do you have for us here about how do we leverage that important pot of funding that exists? How do we utilize it well? And then how are we able to consistently raise this kind of fund to support the fantastic work that many people in this room are doing?
Yeah, so watching from Pinkishe perspective, from where we are looking, one thing is over the last 3-4 years, we are seeing a consistent rise in the CSR funding. It's more responsible. It's more number of organizations are kind of coming forward and they are allocating that money to MHAi, which was earlier not there. That's very clearly that we are experiencing that. So I think this year, corresponding to where we are, will probably grow 3 times in our CSR funding, and by the next year we are kind of expecting it to grow 10 times, and that's huge. Looking at the CSR landscape itself, we're talking of some 30,000 crores and some 52,000 organizations every year. It's a lot of money.
That's a lot of money.
Yes. and if I look at that, I think from the MHM sector perspective, the fact that MHM is a very important subject, and especially when the MHM policy is coming and they need to allocate some funds, right? So that this whole sector can benefit, we can make change at scale.
So a very quick follow-up question. So with the policy and the late news that just came out late last week is that it's going to be again very heavily focused on products. And we know that that's an easy space for CSR to invest their money in. It's very tangible for them. But then you've also successfully convinced your CSR donors to focus on education and other aspects. Now, if this new policy comes out in a way that it seems it might, we don't know for sure, how do we also then work with CSR to say, expand the way you look at menstrual health and hygiene programs, make sure that it is longer term, make sure that it is more awareness focused or empowerment focused, along with product shop and toilets and disposal. But let's
do the same thing. One, from a government perspective, when the MHM policy is approved, we will very soon come to the action plan. And I think we need to be there. We need to be talking to them. These are the people who are working across the nation and are the best people to kind of implement that agenda. Right? And we want to be there guiding them so that the money is not spent unwisely. That is number one, from a government perspective. And similarly, on the other hand, we need to be kind of, like I see Washington IT and a lot of organizations globally, they are kind of asking for investment and making that case. We need to kind of do that same case here also. So like I see the MHM Summit is a great place and a great thing, something that we are following up year on year, where we are all coming on one stage. MHAi has been doing wonderful work on the policy front. And now when it comes to the CSR and action plan, I think this group needs to come together. We need to form some union, start approaching, start representing, get that money so that, and also I'd add to that, one more thing that we need to do is we need to have a landscape. I think last year we were kind of doing some work where you're making a database of everybody who is kind of working in one area. A lot of times we observe, we go to an area and there's already some kind of an overlap of work which is happening. I think we need to move away from that if we have the right kind of a landscape. As we are talking to the CSR of the organization, the corporate, they have started to understand the problem better. They are engaging and they are really focused on solving it rather than what we used to experience 3 years, 4 years back when it used to be photo ops. I think we are going much deeper. But the responsibility is on us to kind of bring that narrative forward, use the social media, use formal channels to do that.
Good points, Arun. Thanks for sharing that. Vikas, we've seen market explode with the variety of products that exist now, and PSAFE has also been in a position where you not just have one particular type.
Applause to yourself, because PSAFE is because of you guys. Because the way you guys are advocating about menstrual hygiene, I think we are taking that benefit at the top of the pyramid of making product available. Now to answer your question, I think PSAFE started with toilet seat sanitizer with a personal experience, but being a private company, you can't build a brand with only one product. So the idea was to bring in innovative products from puberty to menopause, 40 years of women's life, how we can get into women's birth through PSAFE and then into sustainable menstrual care, sexual wellness and this. Just to talk about data, 2020 January, we were selling. Sure. Sorry about that. Is it okay?
Yes, we can hear.
So when we started, we were doing somewhere around. So unless and until we all come together and take the data which we have, which particular stage is selling, what type of products, unless and until the scale grows up by people paying for that, I think the price will not come down. And that's what we need, that the price of menstrual product should come down. But that will only come down when more and more people are using it. PSAFE has always been advocating, supporting, people like each one in this room, and definitely want to learn from you that how we can reach out to it. So we are actually selling to close to 15, so we have around 150 distributors across 150 cities and around 22 countries. We work very closely with Geeta ji here. So definitely, the idea is not, we all know the problem, right? The idea is how we can grow from here. So, most welcome to learn from our experience and mistakes, and we can take it forward.
Thanks, Vikas, and great to hear of your growth and progress. So, I think, we've been looking at the way the government has been shaping the MH work for a long time. This year, I think we have celebrated 10 years of MH Day, but the Government of India and civil society's commitment to menstrual health predates that by many, many, many years. With this new national policy, I think we've been hearing murmurings within civil society, within researchers, and even MSMEs that we're not engaged in the process enough. As you rightly said, it's going to roll out, but where is our voice? How do the three of you think that we can begin to play a more active role in informing policy, and then when it is announced, supporting its rollout? What is the role that we play in our various roles? So, Geeta, let me start with you.
Madam, you use that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Sorry.
Just not the screen.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so when we talk about, our NGO and SME's role in creating awareness and in the policy making, I think the first and foremost, as Arunji said, the coalition, the collaborative approach. Until and unless we don't have all the like-minded people all present here having to build a coalition wherein we can influence the decision making at the policy level. So that is the first. Secondly is the evidence-based advocacy, which the classic example is beside me. MHAi is doing fabulous work and collecting data, doing the research, and evidence-based recommendations are given to the concerned authorities. That's very, very important because until and unless that is not done, we cannot move forward. So that is utmost important. And thirdly, I guess the fostering innovations in spreading this positive changes in the policies that we're having. So once the solution is there, there has to be some kind of innovative ways to spread the message across and encourage the bottom of the pyramid people also to engage in the policy making. So basically to follow those. So yes, this innovation has to be there at the end.
So Geeta, just to ask, because you've been going through, just to take the
Yes.
example of standards, right?
Yes.
So it's not been an easy process, it's been challenging, and you're not also the only enterprise that has faced challenges.
Yeah.
But you've also felt that your voice has not often been heard by the standard setting body,
Yes.
and that you're not always included in that process. And so, again, now that you've been through the process, how would you think that you would like small and medium enterprises like yourself to be a part of that process and inform?
Yeah, so it is important, Arundati, because I remember 2021, 28 May, they launched the VI standards. Yeah, yeah, for the reusable cloth sanitary pads and menstrual cup for the first time, and revised standards for the disposable pads. Immediately after that, there was another group made to go against it, right? But somewhere I knew that VI standards for a longer run is a good option. We have to support it. But then it was not compulsory, so no one took it that seriously. Now, before even launching that, I remember Tanya, having word with Tanya, from your co-founder, that we need to form these standards and we may need some technical details from you. So there were a lot of people involved, but then it was in silos because obviously there was COVID also. It was just a call, we just talk and things were noted down and the policies were made. But then when the policy was actually made with our recommendations and our inputs, it was not discussed with us. We were not made aware of it. Like, what part of your suggestions or what part of your technical knowledge has been used in it, and where do you want us to make any changes or edits. It was just launched, and because it was not compulsory, obviously none of us took that seriously, but then when it was made compulsory recently, and that's when we went through it in detail,
and a lot of things. Yeah, there were a lot of loopholes, and I was continuously bugging her and Tanya, messaging them like, how do we do this, to understand certain technical aspects. Now you can imagine there are handful of numbers of manufacturers in the country, and most of them are SSG groups, right? So for them to understand and invest in an expensive BIS process it's a huge thing, it's a huge amount, and it's not feasible for everybody to go for it. So yes, there were many loopholes, some technical small loopholes to bigger loopholes, but then it took us time, it took us to and fro with the lab testing, the labs, the testing agencies and the field officers, the BIS officials, to make them understand that this is written there, but it doesn't exactly mean this. It could also mean this. But having all men's team at BIS, I think that's also another challenge, Okay, what do you mean by leakage, okay? So, leakage means, either nahi jana chahiye, udhar nahi jana chahiye. Like leakage means it's a cloth, you cannot keep it to, it doesn't have gel like a disposable pad where it will just lock the, flow. So, leakage jayega, lekin it should not leak from the below. Why on the seam? So then mention seam. On sides means it could be any side. So there were few things here and there, but ultimately we could, because see, BIS was launched very recently. As Unipads, we were already following international standards. Yeah, because we were supplying globally. So yes, the international standards which we've been following since long, we had the certificates in place, and that kind of made a strong case for us. And that's when the other party understood, okay, these people are serious and I think they are right. So yeah.
Great, thanks Geeta. And I also think that is great that we have very strong and different opinions with regards to various aspects of menstrual health. Even for standards, I think it's good that we have an opposing point of view because it pushes us to work harder to make the case for it, but also to see where they're not applicable and to be cognizant of the fact that standards are not always applicable. So I think that it's good for us to have this kind of dissenting views, but good point on, I think we still have a lot of work to do to see how can we be more engaged from the get-go in some of these processes and inform them better. Arun, over to you. I mean, you've spoken actually to me quite extensively on where you think that, how do we as civil society really engage with government? So, tell us about your thoughts. What do we do and how do we do it?
I'll up a bit more on the lead. And you mentioned the CSR process and the CSR funding. And as I'm seeing a lot of organizations, not everybody is kind of even equipped to reach out to the organization and kind of get that funding, right? I think we have a responsibility, collective responsibility to kind of help the fraternity and make it stronger by kind of passing on that message, lessons learned, even those very basic things as sharing how to write a proposal, what to write there, how to kind of build your capacity, what are these organizations looking at, right? And that enhanced funding will help a lot of NGOs at the grassroots level kind of take that as a product and message and education and forward. I would really harp on this, and somewhere out of this today's session, somewhere if we can kind of follow it up, right? Because I don't want it to happen every year, but during the year we do not kind of follow it up. Create some kind of a body, reach out to the government, make a specialist body, somebody kind of making that whole noise for the corporate, somewhere engaging with the government, talking to different ministries. What can we do? What can we bring to the table? So that when that action plan is formulated, we are there, helping them make it not only from our inputs, but as a party to it, right? Because rather than them, I would say rather, yes, they know the scale and they know the nation, but we know the subject, and I think that needs to be done.
Great. I would like to also, perhaps when to our last question, also think about what are some of your suggestions and which group are you going to bring us together? So Vikas, again, as private sector, we have a strange relation.
We are a startup, right? We are still making process. Okay. We should be given a level playing field with the MNCs. We are still not qualified to bid for government tenders, right? Because we are not profitable. We don't have a history of 3 years of continuous profit. So I think these are the few things which, if I'm talking from the PSAFE side. But again, I echo what Arunji and Vikas said, Geeta said, how the government can allow, quality product or a level playing field for a lot of self-help groups. They should be given a chance to participate in tenders. They should be given a chance to actually represent, unless until that changes. Because when the tender comes in, the specs comes in, these are all made by the MNCs, right? The Procter & Gamble, the J&J of the world, and they put that technical so strong that we just can't participate. So if I'm talking about PSAFE, yes, we want that kind of a foot in the supplies. Unless we do that, we'll be working almost on a weekly, monthly basis to create some information bank and start working as a group. I think that's what PSAFE is here for.
So, question for you then: how do we begin to create this level playing field? How have you seen it being done in another sector? What can we learn from that?
See, I haven't been into aerospace and defense for good 25 years. So what the body which they have created, the representative body of the manufacturers, they go and talk to the government, right? So say for example, if an Israeli company, I'm just giving an example, right? An Israeli company want to supply stuff here, they have to do around 30% localization. So the same case, if government is buying an X amount, they should be allotted around 20-25% to the companies who are not qualified to participate in procurement tenders. So once you start building it up, you see a lot of products, a lot of visibility. I think that's the way to it. This is the easy way to get it.
It's a great recommendation, and actually there are some states like Rajasthan government who allocate a certain portion of their procurement of pads to SFGs. The issue that we've heard from state governments is that the quality does not meet the quality of other vendors. Not that the quality from vendors is great, but I mean, that's the feedback from community. So I think that while we should certainly ensure that a proportion of procurement of government is more evenly distributed, especially for the self-help groups, you also need to support them for quality. Because ultimately the end user, उनको पता नहीं ना कि उनको SFG वाला माल मिल रहा है कि किसी और का माल कि कौन सा माल मिल रहा है.
I just want to add here on the government quality products and all, because government wants to buy at 1 rupee pad,
Yes.
which is next to impossible to manufacture. So the absorption has to be say around. We definitely need to change there. The blame is always not on the private sectors, but it has to be on the procurement process.
Okay. Yeah, great. Okay, so I'm going to do a last question before we'll also throw it out to the audience. Is that, we're lucky, as all the three of you have said, we have a rich, vibrant community of practice in India and in this room. And so give me one vision for what you want to see us do together before we meet at the next summit. What's your vision?
If I had to put it in one vision statement, it would be to see an empowered community of women and girls, making an informed decision by having the freedom to choose, with given the universal access to education, quality, menstrual hygiene products, so that they can have a dignified life, because that's utmost important. That's because in my sessions also, when I talk to the girls in the grassroots level, I want that open conversation to happen at the first place. Until and unless we don't, the moment I have cough and cold, I can immediately tell the whole family I have cough and cold, I need to go to see the doctor. But if you have a UTI, it's just a hush-hush. So I want to encourage everybody at bottom of the pyramid, to everyone, that there has to be an open conversation. So one thing that I keep repeating to the girls and the women there is, Masik Mari Shakti Chai, which is Gujarati, which means that periods is my power, the menstruation is my power. So just don't feel ashamed of talking about it and start having a positive conversation and open conversation around it. So I want that to happen at every level.
And your call to to the community practice.
Yeah, I think that collision and thing in place wherein we know who is working where and how.
And we are there to kind of guide,
We formed our
support,
action plan.
right? The government can ask us a lot of things, because I see a lot of money kind of getting wasted, kind of doing things which are not sustainable, as we talk about the incinerators and things I have not seen. And every day I go to a different So the right usage of those resources, working with us, I think that's what I would like to see. Next year we discuss the action plan, not the policy.
I love that. Awesome.
Nothing much to add. I think both of you have covered whatever. But I think instead of a vision, I think we should have a purpose, and everyone is here for a purpose. I think we should see that that purpose is served well. We all work together, take the learnings of whatever we have. I've been fighting with the MNCs to have my place and to take that share of market or to increase the penetration of menstrual product. I think that's what we are here for. So let's work together and get it done. I think we should collaborate, not compete.
So I love this message of, we should collaborate, not compete. But the reality is that, all of us have huge funding pressures. We're all trying to keep our organizations, whether for profit or not for profit, afloat in this environment, especially with recent regulatory changes. So I want to actually, if we have 5 minutes, Geeta ji, just to throw it out to the audience that how do we set on this course of collaboration, not competition? How do we do this? Which are those topic areas that we can actually bring ourselves together? It may not be possible everywhere, and it may not be possible for all issues, but yeah, we were discussing that we'd love to hear your thoughts on that. So if we have 5 minutes, Geeta ji, can we ask anybody? Yeah, please feel free. Yes.
So what I personally believe is that we're talking about this policy where they have said that from the standard 6 they'll be providing free menstrual products.
Very good point, and sorry, I've been asked to wrap up, but depending on that point, I think it's actually great to even have a group of civil society organizations and even MSMEs that to come together to talk about what are the core messages that we can provide to girls and women on this. We talked about it a number of years ago, but we never came to manufacturers and advocates for menstrual cup manufacturers and advocates, and those that are working with persons with disabilities, working with LGBTQIA groups, although I think we don't have too many represented in this hall today. But then to find these groups and to figure out how we can work together, and to at least with a common messaging, common offerings, without kind of perhaps sharing our trade secrets as getting us.
Ladies and gentlemen, as it was a very interactive session on current status, MHM framework and policy guidelines,